Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Good morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
guys.
Hi.
How's it going?
That's good now.
Hi, Mike.
Hi there. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks, guys, for doing this.
How are
No
the
problem.
sessions going so far?
The sessions are, that's me officially knocking, they are going okay. They're actually going really well. If you could imagine, because normally you guys, I look at you straight on, I have 4 computers open at the same time. I have 3 sessions that I'm watching and then the main room, and Naomi's watching the other 3 sessions.
Oh, wow.
Just to make sure that no one has like a complete tech meltdown.
Mike?
Yeah. Oh, wait, now Naomi's calling me from another thing. Wait a second. Yeah.
Do we have the closed caption on, or everyone does that themselves?
Yeah, it's there. You just got to push the CC button at the bottom if you want it.
Got it. Oh, we're already recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys. So my thought is you guys will manage your own space. Is that cool with you, or do you need a facilitator?
I think we can manage.
I think you can manage too, but I didn't want to assume for you. I think you could easily manage.
Yeah.
And plus, Michael's all dressed up fancy, so if anybody's going to facilitate it, it's going to be him.
He's got the experience too.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
fine.
fancy. I had put a nice shirt on for the welcome because it was the only part that was going to be recorded with me in it, and then I was like, that's it. I'm moving around. I'm out of that. So
So are these video recording as well as
they
audio?
we are recording them, so it's recording right now. And then what I'll do is when we download it, I'll chop this part out so people don't see it, and we'll basically start right at the beginning.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. So
I guess it'll technically be there. They'll still be able to go backwards and see it, but the link we share will take them right to the start of the presentation. So they really have to want to go backwards to see what we're talking about.
Really interested in our mindless banter.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how we go. Most of the sessions have been pretty full. So depending on where we're at, some of the hot topics have had like 60 people, some have had like 20, some have had like 15. So we've kind of been all over the place, but it's been great so far.
Awesome.
well, that's good.
Yeah, we had 620 people sign up.
Wow.
So we'll see.
And how many
See.
people usually come to your in-person AT Summit? That's usually about
Usually
150.
about 180-ish. Yeah, I'm curious to see how many people, when we're done, will run a report. I'm curious to see how many people are actually from New Jersey. I sense a lot of people are not, just from looking at them and knowing their name, knowing the people's names around here. Most of our presenters are out of state, which has been a good thing for the virtual. You know, when we're doing it in person, we're limited by people who can get to us for that thing. Now there's no limit, so people just all kind of signed up, which is great. So
That is the great thing about, the silver lining to all the virtual stuff is that
yeah, it kind of has been. In fact, it's made it nice and open, which is awesome. And I checked with Robert yesterday, and he is going to join.
Great.
Okay.
And he'll have Don with him. So hopefully, Don, and if I'm not on, if I'm helping somebody else, just if we could just encourage Don to just turn his camera on so people can see him. I'll try to remind him when I pop in if I see him. I don't know if he's going to be with Robert or in 2 separate spots, so I have no idea how they're doing this.
I think last time Robert did something, he had a court appearance by Zoom. He had Robert like standing across his kitchen from him.
And that's what he usually does. Yeah, is that Robert stands on one side and kind of Don, like right out of the picture, is with him. And that's fine, but I don't know because it was kind of last minute. I don't know if they're going to be able to work that out. So they may log in as two separate people. I just don't know. So we'll have to see.
Okay.
We'll just
All
go
right.
with the flow.
That's the right answer, Jill. That's the right answer.
That's my answer
right.
for everything.
Me too. I agree. I mean, I'm all about the flow. It'll all work itself out. Look, we're halfway through the day almost already. It's fine. It's all working out.
So how late does
All
this
right.
go till?
It goes till 4 o'clock, 3:45.
Oh, wow. So you still
Yeah.
have several more sessions.
There's our keynote and then 3 more sessions this afternoon. So that's okay. We're almost halfway there. It's okay. It's all right. All right, I'm gonna mute myself with you guys. I'm gonna go help somebody else make sure she's good, and then I'll pop back on if you need me.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Keep up the good work. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
I guess by way of introduction, we'll be all introducing ourselves and the session as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
It's like folks are coming in.
I forgot to ask how many were registered for this particular session.
Hey, everybody. It's around 11 o'clock. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes, let folks filter in if they're coming from other sessions.
Oh, I see. Robert's just joined us. Or he's joining right now.
Great. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Robert. So, Robert.
You can message him.
Oh.
And folks just checking in, I've got the clock at 3 after 11, where I think we're just waiting on our American Sign Language interpreter to join us. Just double checking the participant list to see if he's here yet.
Hi, everybody. I came back. What do we look? Can you please see? Okay. I don't see Don. I don't see Don's screen.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Okay, I think we're going to get started now, if everybody's good to go. All right, so hi everyone, good morning. I am Michael Brower. I am a supervising attorney at Disability Rights New Jersey. I supervise our community inclusion team, which is one of several different issue teams that we have at the agency. It focuses on addressing legal problems with folks with all different kinds of disabilities who live in a community-based setting like their own home, a group home, or maybe a supervised apartment. I'm joined here by 3 other Disability Rights New Jersey staff who will be part of the panel this morning for us to talk in an Ask the Advocate session. We've each got a really brief presentation to give you. We'll keep it very short, I promise. And then the focus for the bulk of the session is going to be question and answers, just kind of talking about different ways that people access assistive technology, all the different avenues, and maybe a little bit of troubleshooting. So with that, I've introduced myself. I'll pass it around the panel. Just looking up on my screen, Mary is to my right, so I'll pass it off to her.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Stacone. I'm the Director of Policy at Disability Rights New Jersey, and I also manage the employment team. Our team consists of people with issues regarding employment discrimination under the LAD and the New Jersey Law Against Discrimination and the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we also handle issues regarding under the CAP program, the Client Assistance Program, which involves issues what people might have with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation or the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I'm also in charge of our voting team, and which is very busy right now with the upcoming election. So I can talk to you about any changes to the laws for the upcoming election as well. So if you have questions about that, I can speak about voting. Jill?
Good morning, afternoon. I'm Jill Hogle. I'm right now the managing advocate of the community inclusion team, as Michael described, soon to be the director of monitoring investigations at DRNJ. Also the coordinator of our PAD program. That's the Protection and Advocacy for Individuals with Developmental Disabilities. I'll pass to Robert now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Robinson. I'm the Director of a Special Education Program with the DRNJ, Disability Rights New Jersey. I focus on special education, and I've been focusing on that for the last 18 years. My work involves a lot of assistive technology because school districts require that any assistive technology device be provided to students that they need in order to provide them with an appropriate education. I'm very happy to have you all.
All right, fantastic. So that's our panel. I'm going to kick it off with a very, very brief explanation. A lot of the work I've done at Disability Rights New Jersey focuses on people's Medicaid entitlements. and ways to get all kinds of different services through Medicaid. But since we're at the AT Summit talking about assistive technology, I just want to give you a real quick overview. It's thankfully not terribly complicated when we talk about assistive technology. It's available through Medicaid. Obviously, when we talk any service through Medicaid, the first question is going to be Medicaid eligibility. For someone to get any kind of a service, you need to be eligible for Medicaid. There's a whole bunch of different ways that an individual can become eligible. It may be because somebody receives SSI in New Jersey that automatically comes with Medicaid eligibility. It may be because somebody has a developmental disability and is eligible for Medicaid through the special terms of the DDD Medicaid waivers. Somebody might be at a nursing home level of care and may be eligible through the MLTSS, that's the Managed Long-Term Services and Supports Medicaid waiver. That also comes with some special eligibility requirements. Somebody might be aged blind or disabled, eligible through their county. A couple different ways that people could be eligible for Medicaid. I'm not going to go into that because each one of those has a lot of complicated eligibility rules, but I'm going to assume that if we're talking, somebody's already Medicaid eligible. The good news is, regardless of what door you come in through to get onto Medicaid, once you're in the system, the state plan, meaning the rules that apply to anybody in the Medicaid system, includes some level of funding for assistive technology. And assistive technology, when it comes to Medicaid, is going to be focused on things like mobility assistance, that's wheelchairs, walkers, and canes, home modifications for some of the waiver programs like managed long-term services and supports, includes some funding for home modification. That might be something like adding a ramp or a lift, widening a doorway. Some of that stuff is a little bit less technology, but the state plan also covers things like assistive communication devices. That could be a communication board, other kind of more computer-based technology that would assist somebody who can't communicate verbally to participate in the world around them, whether that's medical services or just participating in society as a whole. All of those services come through Medicaid managed care organizations. And right now, 99% of the people who are enrolled in Medicaid are assigned to a managed care organization, commonly abbreviated MCO. And any kind of request for assistive technology initiates with the provider. So somebody would consult with a provider who has done an evaluation and says, yes, Michael Brower could assist from having, or could benefit from having an iPad so that he can understand the world around him, communicate via potentially, a communication board. Maybe he needs a specialized wheelchair or a customized piece of equipment to help him with reaching or grasping, or helping him put on shoes. All of those things would be prescribed. The request for payment would go to the managed care organization, who would review the documentation, approve it or deny it. And if there's a denial, the good news is, this is my specialty, there's an appeal process that's relatively formal that lets both sides get all the facts out and come to a good decision about whether or not Medicaid should or should not pay for something. It's all based on whether or not it's necessary to address a specific need. It's kind of an overview, real big nutshell of what's available through Medicaid. I'm sure some of the questions will develop the finer nuances of the questions and answers as we go. So with that, I'll pass it off. We'll follow the same order. Let's go to Mary next.
Basically, I'm not going to talk too much because I say I'm going to let you guys ask questions. For assistive technology, there are ways to get funding through either the DVRS, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, depending on your particular circumstances. They, AT evaluations can be done through them in order to basically get, if it's needed for work or employment. Also, you may be able to receive accommodations, assistive technology as an accommodation through your workplace. If you are currently employed and you have a computer that you need voice activated software, that may be something that your employer can provide as a reasonable accommodation so that you can do your job. So those are basically how you can get assistive technology if it's involving employment. Jill?
Okay. So I'm just briefly gonna explain how you can access assistive technology services if you are an adult over the age of 21 and eligible for services from the Division of Developmental Disabilities. DDD has two waiver programs, the supports program and the community care program, both of which do offer assistive technology services that you can purchase with your budget. Some of the things that fall under that are assistive technology evaluations, purchasing or acquiring assistive technology, customizing devices, repairing or replacing devices, ongoing maintenance fees, and training or technical assistance for the family, guardian, caretaker professionals to use the technology. So again, if you're eligible for DDD services under either of those two waiver programs, you can use part of your budget to access assistive technology services. The one important point that I do want to make is that you cannot access those services through your DDD budget if they are something that would otherwise you would be eligible for through the Medicaid state plan that Michael already mentioned. So if it's something available to you that you can access through the state plan services, that would really be the only barrier to getting those services through DDD. So I'm going to pass to Robert now to talk about accessing through special education.
For students with disabilities to get assistive technology, they have to do that under the 504 plan or an IEP. Some students might not need special ed, but they do need accommodations, like a ramp or something like that for a wheelchair. And some AT devices are just so obvious that they obviously need it. They don't need an evaluation to determine if they're needed. If a person has a visual impairment, obviously they need a computer screen if they can see somewhat to be enlarged, for example, or maybe a computer that speaks for them. If people are not sure what kind of assistive technologies they would need, then a school district should do an evaluation of that to determine what assistive technology is needed, and then any assistive technology that is needed for the purposes of their education, the school district is then obligated to pay for that. And the school district can ask parents if their insurance might be able to pay for any kind of assistive technology device. And that's fine. Parents can do that. They can ask their insurance company, but understand that the insurance company might say no, and the insurance company and the parents can also say no, I'm not going to ask my insurance company. The school district is responsible to provide it. There are a few different kinds of evaluations, very specialized evaluations under special education. So you should ask the Department of Education, New Jersey Department of Education, for a list of AT experts. And my agency has some AT experts, or at least knows of qualified people who are considered assistive technology experts. So basically that's it regarding special education. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And thanks everyone else too on the panel for getting us started. I hear an echo. I don't know if I want to just double check to make sure your mics are on mute or your speakers aren't right in front of your mic. So just a quick piece of housekeeping for questions. Anyone has, I see somebody's already started us off, which is fantastic. Use the chat box. It's the easiest way for us to kind of make sure that we're getting through and keeping track of questions. We don't lose track of anybody who wants to ask a question. Other piece of housekeeping is obviously we've got 3 attorneys on our panel. We talk generally, and we'll give you some general information that's helpful, try to point you in the right direction for resources. If you have any real specific, I've got a legal problem and I want legal advice, what I would tell you to do, instead of trying to ask a question and, get legal advice in a public forum like this, I would really steer you towards Disability Rights New Jersey's intake line. That is 1-800-922-7233, or online at drnj.org if you want to request really specific advice in your particular case. Just that helps us maintain confidentiality. You don't have to air your dirty laundry in a public forum like this. With that being said, I think we're good to go. And we've got a question in the chat already. This one looks like it's set up for you, Mary.
Yes, I see it. The question is there a link or resource to present to an employer for an accommodation for an employee? Generally, if you want information about getting an accommodation, the laws that govern it are the Americans with Disabilities Act or the New Jersey Law Against Discrimination. You can go to the U.S. Department of Justice website for information about accommodations under ADA, what the law requires. You can also go to the Division on Civil Rights for the New Jersey Law Against Discrimination. Depending on what your issue is, like if you're not sure what type of accommodation you need for an employment, I would strongly recommend that you contact the Job Accommodation Network, JAN. And I think I'm not sure what the website is, but if you Google Job Accommodation Network, it will come up. It's out of the University of West Virginia, or West Virginia University. And it's a national resource for people for employers and for employees to try to find accommodations for people with disabilities. And assistive technology is like a perfect example of what you can find through the Job Accommodations Network. Because sometimes you don't know necessarily what piece of equipment you might need, and they can help you work through to help you decide, help you find the appropriate accommodation for you. Now, with respect to accommodations, be aware that they've got to be reasonable. So if they're too expensive or they're impossible to provide, the employer may not have to provide them. But when you ask for, basically the rule is if you have an accommodation or you're having trouble with work and you think you need an accommodation, you need to request the accommodation to the employer. Go to your manager or your human resources people and request the accommodation. At that point, they're required to engage in what they call an interactive process. So you'll have to provide information about your disability and how it affects your job. If you've got an obvious disability, you don't have to provide that much documentation. If you are in a wheelchair and you need a special desk because the desk is too low, that's an obvious disability and it's obvious what the problem is. If you have a hidden disability, maybe you have some kind of cardiac issue where you can't walk a long distance you can't go up and down stairs or something like that. And you just want to move your desk to another location, something like that. You may need to provide documentation to show you have this problem and that's why you need that accommodation. You don't need to provide a huge medical history, but you do have to provide enough documentation to explain what your disability is and why it affects your job. Once you engage in that interactive process, then you are able to, the employer can come back and say, yes, we're going to provide it. No, we're not going to provide it. We don't think it's a reasonable accommodation. Or they may come back and say, well, we understand you need this accommodation, but we have this other alternative solution. And then that, can that work instead of what you want? The employee is not entitled to the best accommodation. They're entitled to what will help them be able to perform the functions of their job. So that's why you engage in the interactive process. So that's basically the process at that point. And for many accommodations, there's not a big cost. It may be moving your desk. It may be getting another desk. For assistive technology, you may need special software. That may not be that big of a deal for a really large employer. It may be very costly for a small employer. So when you talk about reasonable accommodations, reasonable is, attorneys love that word because it can mean a lot of different things depending on the nature of the job and what the size of the employer and how much money the accommodation costs and things like that. So I hope I answered the question.
If I may, I'd like to add to what Mary had just said. That JAN network that that Mary mentioned from the University of West Virginia. I've used them for ideas for special education cases also. They're a great resource. It's not only limited to employment. It's very helpful for, I found it very helpful for special education. And school districts are generally not, also are not required to provide, just so you know, the best education. They're required to provide adequate education. And so some parents say, well, I'd like this, I'd like this device. I've seen it's really great and it's all Wi-Fi connected and everything. And the school does not have to provide that. They can provide something that is adequate to get the job done.
All right, thanks guys for asking that question. While we wait to see if anyone else is going to put some questions in the chat, and I would encourage everyone to do that. This is Ask the Advocate after all, so we want to make sure that we're responding to your concerns. I have a question to throw to Jill, just kind of from a practical standpoint. So we know from Robert talking about special education, you know, the way to get assistive technology through the school district is to ask, you know, starting in the IEP meeting, asking the school for an evaluation for something in particular to address a particular need. You know, for Mary in the employment world, you know, it's engaging your employer with, you know, a request for a particular piece of assistive technology that would serve as an accommodation for your disability. In the DD world, how do you start that ball rolling? What's kind of your practical first step when you think you might need something?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I didn't mention that. So if you're enrolled in the supports program or the community care program, you would also have a support coordinator. So most individuals who are in the DDD system know their support coordinator helps them develop their individual service plan. And so that's a part of that process. So with your support coordinator, that would be your first contact. If you know, you decide or you think that some kind of assistive technology device or service is something that you would need, that first conversation is going to be with your support coordinator and getting that ball rolling as far as putting something into your plan. Now, likely what they may do is make sure that what you're asking for isn't available through some other source, such as you know, needing it for a job. So say it's available through vocational rehabilitation services, or it's something that's available through your Medicaid state plan. If it's not available through other sources, then your support coordinator can help you put that into your plan. And usually the very first thing that happens is the evaluation, is that your DDD budget can pay for an AT evaluation to really target the specific, you know, device, piece of equipment, or service that would be best for you. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks. And I want to add something on, kind of, this is tagging on to what both Mary and Robert were saying about the obligation on either the employer or the school district. Their obligation really isn't to provide the perfect accommodation or the best accommodation. It's to provide something that's either reasonable or that's adequate. In the Medicaid world, the standard is to provide something that's necessary, something that's usually medically necessary. And a lot of the regulations I put in the resources for this session, a link to the Medicaid Durable Medical Equipment Providers Handbook, which is a part of the New Jersey Administrative Code. So it's a little bit of legalese. It's written, you know, by an administrator for an attorney, but it really contains all the different rules. And if you look at the Medicaid system, it's really built around a core of durable medical equipment. So things like, you know, a pump for a tube feed, or a hospital bed, or a wheelchair, maybe a shower chair. It's kind of that, it's got a little bit more of a medical flavor to it. But inside that fits, again, the things like mobility assistance, for reaching or grabbing, or communication assistance are both written into that code as well. The core of everything though is in Medicaid is medical necessity. So I always tell folks, if you're starting that process, either you're applying or maybe you're even in the appeal where you're in a dispute with your managed care organization in Medicaid over whether something is necessary or not, the best way to prepare yourself, the number one kind of advocate's tip I would give, is to start off thinking about it almost with a devil's advocate sitting in the room with you. Someone to think about, even if that's you, asking yourself the same questions, like, is this actually necessary? What kind of things might be more cost effective? Because part of medical necessity is cost effectivity, and there's no, kind of simpler, easier solution. If an aspirin will do, you don't need to go get surgery. What simpler, cheaper things are there in the world? Would they work to address the need I have? If I could use a communications binder that costs $15, do I need an iPad that costs $1,000? Maybe that doesn't work for me. Maybe it works for a whole host of reasons. Maybe the binder's too heavy for me to carry, or maybe, the voice recognition software in an iPad works quicker for me, and that's my particular disability. Kind of start thinking about it from the poke holes in your own case perspective. Identify what might be weak about the request you're making and address it. Your doctor can write a letter for you, medical necessity. It says, here's why these other kinds of assistive technology may not work. They may be cheaper, but they won't work for this person. Here's a really specific example from somebody's medical judgment that can say why a particular pieces of assistive technology are really needed. Starting from that place gets you a better request in the first instance from your provider, since everything kind of works in this insurance world where your provider submits a claim for pre-approval, it gets approved or denied. If that claim comes with really great documentation, you're more likely to get an approval from the outset. And if you do end up in an appeal situation where you get denied and you want to try to get it approved, you've got the documentation in hand already to explain to somebody, whether it's in the appeal process or at a fair hearing, why that particular request really is necessary. Stronger request from the outset and better set up for the appeal later. I've got a question in the chat. All right, so Laurie says, do you have any ideas on how to inform people that the National Disability Institute provides affordable loans for the purchase of AT if a grant or other means of funding is not available? And then she provides a link. My first idea is, thanks for the link, Laurie. That's really helpful. We can spread it through forums like this. I'm curious if we have a link to the National Disability Institute on Disability Rights New Jersey's website. I feel like I've seen that before. And I think that we often provide that information to folks who call us who don't have other forms of funding. Otherwise, I am absolutely not the expert on how to spread information like that far and wide, other than put it on the internet, tweet it out, put a Facebook program, have a training about it. Oh, great, Laurie, yeah, good. I'm glad to hear.
So that's a great first step, and continue sharing it, in forums such as this and others. But Michael, you did mention, and I just wanted to let everybody know that we did put a few links into the shared document that's on the schedule. Everybody who's a participant should have access to the shared document with session notes and resources. I did put in the procedures manual for the supports program and community care program for people to peruse. And we thought, if anybody here had other ideas or suggestions for things that would be helpful for us to drop into that document for people to have access to after the session, feel free to throw those out to us as well.
I'd like to add one thing. It's kind of random. In special education, special education has its own framework for evaluations. Basically, the school district does an evaluation first. If the parents happen to disagree with that, then the school district might pay for an independent evaluation. And that would apply to any kind of evaluation, whether it's psychological, educational, social, psychiatric, and that would also include assistive technology. If a school district does an AT evaluation and the parents disagree with that, then it might be up to the parents to pay for an independent evaluation, or they can get an evaluation done privately. And then I need to emphasize that when you have an AT independent evaluation and you provide that to the school district, the school district is not required to accept the recommendations that were included in that independent evaluation. So a lot of parents think that the school district has got to accept any recommendations that were provided by an expert. It's not the fact. They don't have to. And if a school district doesn't accept that they have that obligation, that responsibility, and they question it, or if they only accept part of the recommendation, and there's part of it is still in dispute, then the parents can still file for due process or mediation. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to briefly mention, since it doesn't seem to be any questions right now. As I said, my one hat is employment, my other hat is voting. And I just wanted to let people know that the upcoming election, it's going to be done primarily vote by mail. And for people with some types of disabilities, especially visual impairments or dexterity impairments, the paper ballot that you get through the vote by mail system does not work. So the state is offering an option to request an accessible vote by mail ballot. And that is one that you would call up your county clerk, say, I can't use the vote by mail ballot because I have a disability. And they will send you a link to an electronic ballot. And at that point, you can then go into you can take your computer with all of its assistive technology to help you fill out the ballot electronically, so that you can actually vote independently and secretly, and you don't necessarily need help to vote. At that point, you would then actually have to print out the ballot and return the ballot in the vote by mail ballot envelopes. There's two envelopes, an inner envelope and an outer envelope. And you would return it, and that's how your vote is cast. But you still at least can fill out the ballot electronically rather than through having to try to have someone else fill out the ballot for you. So there will be an option for accessible ballots. In addition, if you want to go and vote in person, you would still have the option to vote on an accessible vote by mail, accessible voting machine in the polling place. Everybody who goes will be considered, it's going to be a provisional ballot, but they will have a machine for accessible voting at the polling places.
Looks like there's a special education question in the chat. Robert, I don't know if you can see that there. Maybe you want to address?
I should type my response about mediation. Mediation, you asked me the difference between mediation and due process. Mediation is a more formal process. There's no judge, a more informal process. There's no judge involved. There's a neutral person who works for the state, but they're trying to only help to resolve this situation. They don't take sides in anything, and if they fail in that process, then they transfer the case to due process. And when a parent files to start an allegation, to start the due process. They have 30 days called a resolution period. Mediation is one option. There's another option, resolution session. That can be really, I don't want to go really too long into that, but that is basically just the parents and the school district alone meeting, and mediation is having a neutral party there coming in to help resolve the case and help the parties come to an agreement. If at the end of the 30 days there's still no resolution, then it goes to the Office of Administration, in this Office of Administrative Law for the process of due process. The Department of Education has a special handbook for parents of special ed students. PRISE is the acronym. So you should try and get that handbook, that manual from the internet. And in there, they do a pretty good job of explaining how this whole system works. And I'll try and find a link and post it while we're here in our meeting.
Thanks, Robert. And I think I saw one other question came in from Laurie about whether Advancing Opportunities provides AT evaluations. My memory is that they do. I know everything is a little bit odd in the time of pandemic. We're still, still working under a lot of adjusted rules. I would have to check with them directly to see if they're still doing it currently. I see Mike chiming in saying, yes, they do. I'll defer to the authority. He is the AT man, so he knows.
So can I ask a question, actually?
Go ahead.
And it may be for Robert/Michael, but if you're a student in, say, transition age and you're seeking maybe an AT device for the first time, would there be pros or cons to either going through the school or going through your insurance plan to get that? Not sure if Robert
So
heard the question.
I'll give Robert a second to formulate what he thinks about it. I've got kind of a layperson's answer when it relates to special ed, just because it's not really my wheelhouse so much. But if it's something that you need and that can be covered through your insurance plan, and you think you have a good likelihood of having it approved by your insurance plan, the good news is it's not tied to your educational entitlement. So if, say you mentioned transition, somebody who's aging out of the school system, ages 18 to 21, and they're looking at graduation and going into, the real world, so to speak. If it's something that you've gotten covered through your insurance plan, whether that's private insurance, maybe you're eligible for Medicare or Medicaid, that entitlement will continue typically into adulthood, depending on how you're eligible. Again, there's a whole bunch of different ways and there's some complicating factors in there, but in most situations, it's probably going to continue into adulthood, which means you would still have access to coverage for whatever that assistive technology device happens to be. Again, whether it's a wheelchair that you may, if you're still growing, you may age out of, or if it ages and needs to be replaced, you'll still have an avenue to go. But once you've aged out of the special education system and you're no longer in public school, we're eligible to an entitlement for a free and appropriate public education. That door closes on you and you'd have to look for a different place to go. So in the name of continuity, there might be some benefit to going through the insurance program first. I don't know if Robert has a different take on it. Maybe from his angle, it looks a little different.
I wonder, Robert seems to be typing. So I don't know if he's heard, if he saw what we were saying.
I'm not sure you heard the question.
Yeah, did you hear the question, Robert, from Jill? Or did you see the question from Jill?
No, I did not.
Okay. Basically, she wanted to know if someone's aging out, is there pros and cons of getting your service assistive technology through through school versus maybe Medicaid or some other resource? Michael gave a long answer of what he thought, but you know, you're the expert, so do you have an answer? I mean, I would say,
I'm sorry, I got a little lost there.
okay.
Bing in, I'm sorry, I missed the question and I'm not clear on what the question is.
Okay. I would say, I did special ed before too, that the one thing is that when you're talking about assistive technology, the school district owns the equipment. So if you need a device after you graduate, you may want to find some other source to provide you with that device, because you will have to turn the device back into the school district once you either age out or you graduate. So whether that means if you're going into employment, you can get a service through DVRS. If you get Medicaid, you can get it through Medicaid. What other resource you might be able to try to find? I would say try to find that if you are, especially if you are close to either aging out of special education or at that point graduating, so that you actually continue, you will own the device versus the school district owning the device.
Agree with you more. Any assistive technology device you get from a school district would only be for use for your educational purposes. And once you graduate, and I recommend just as soon as possible, as early as possible, as far in advance of graduation, ask DVRS and ask Medicaid and ask these other resources. Don't wait till the last second there, because you don't want a gap in these assistive technology devices. So as early as possible, try and start that process, start that ball rolling. Don't wait till the last minute.
All right.
But depends on people's situations. I do understand that. There's no one pat answer that one blanket answer that's going to work for everybody. And I'm so sorry I missed your question before when I was typing.
So I'm looking at the clock. It's 11:46 by my official clock. So I think we're actually 1 minute over our scheduled window for the morning. I want to respect everyone's time. I know you've got other sessions to get to. I know the lunchtime keynote is probably coming up next in just a few minutes. So to give you all time to transition, make sure you connect. I think we're going to wrap up. Thanks to the participants on the panel and to the registrants for coming and asking some good questions, a couple of good ones, and hopefully everybody learned a little something. And I just, again, want to reiterate, if you have a particular situation, or if you're looking for a referral for somebody who has a particular situation they want case-specific advice on, send them over to drnj.org. They can find all the telephone numbers, the information for requesting an intake or a service request, and we could take a look to see what they've got going on. Otherwise, I'll have a good day and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.